You gonna run me over with your walker?
We'll forget the whole thing ever happened. Oh.
You wanna be a hero too, Gramp?
No.
At the start of the film, we see Vietnam War veteran Frank Vega gain widespread fame and the nickname Badass after he heroically stops two skinheads on a bus who were harassing passengers and trying to assault an elderly man. Someone records the incident and uploads it to YouTube, where it quickly goes viral. Frank is later honored with an award from the police for his brave actions. 3 years later, Frank is living a quiet life as an amateur boxing coach. One day, after finishing a training session, one of his students, Manny, gives him a cell phone before heading out. On his way home, Manny is attacked by 3 men in the street, and one of them fatally stabs him from behind, leaving him to die. Devastated, Manny's mother pleads with Frank to find her son's killer. She believes Frank's heroism on the bus wasn't just luck, that he's meant to protect the city. However, Frank initially refuses, saying it's the police's responsibility. Later, at a liquor store owned by Bernie, Frank tells him he should see a doctor about his health issues. Suddenly, armed robbers storm in. Frank jumps into action, defeats the attackers, and turns them over to the police. Officer Malark informs Frank that drugs were found on Manny's body, shocking him. Frank refuses to believe Manny was involved in drugs. The next day, Frank gathers his students and warns them, anyone caught dealing or using drugs will answer to him personally. He stresses that drugs are for losers. One student, Tucson, becomes a suspect but refuses to talk. Frank follows him home and catches him sneaking into a luxury house. Under pressure, Tucson confesses that Manny had been dealing drugs but planned to quit once he turned professional. Tucson then leads Frank to the source of the drugs. Frank attacks the location, gets into a fight, and burns pills worth $250,000. News of the destroyed drugs quickly reaches the kingpin behind the operation, an Argentine diplomat. Furious over the financial loss, he orders his son, Adolfo, to find and eliminate those responsible. Meanwhile, Frank struggles emotionally with the revelation about Manny and drowns his sorrow in alcohol. As he stumbles through the streets, Adolfo's men ambush him. Just as they're about to kill Frank, Bernie shows up with a hockey stick and saves him. Back at home, Bernie opens up about his past as a hockey player whose career ended due to injury. With only 6 months left to live, he decides to help Frank hunt down Adolfo. The next day, they try to drive Bernie's car but it breaks down, forcing them to take the bus. They enlist the help of a female cop and follow a lead to a teen party, where they interrogate a man named Hammer. He gives them information about Adolfo's hideout, Villa Costa in Malibu. Enraged that 2 elderly men are disrupting his operations, Adolfo retaliates by bombing Frank's gym. Fortunately, no one is inside. Officer Malark warns Frank to back off, but he and Bernie continue the mission, staying overnight at Rosario's home before heading to Adolfo's mansion. At the gate, Frank bribes security with a bag of weed, saying, "Rules are meant to be broken." Inside, Frank confronts Adolfo and they fight. As Frank is about to win, security intervenes. Bernie attacks the guards, and Frank blinds Adolfo by stabbing his eyes with a screwdriver. Adolfo admits his father, Leandro, is the real mastermind and can be found at the Argentine consulate. Knowing Leandro has diplomatic protection, Frank pressures Adolfo to help lure him out. They arrange to meet at a restaurant, where Frank has Leandro arrested. Later, Frank informs Rosario that the man responsible for her son's death is in custody. They reconnect emotionally, and Rosario shows romantic interest in Frank. The next morning, Officer Malark brings bad news. Leandro is being released due to lack of evidence and diplomatic immunity. Frank is furious but remains determined to take him down. Frank and Bernie then discover Leandro's drug smuggling method, hiding narcotics and packing meat. They're caught, locked in a freezer, and confronted by Leandro, who arrogantly demands Frank repay the destroyed drugs or face consequences, including harm to Rosario. They manage to escape, but Rosario has been kidnapped by Leandro's men. When Frank and Bernie arrive, they find only Julia hiding behind a secret door. She helps them by tracking Rosario's phone. Tucson arrives with Bernie's repaired car, and they head up the mountain. Adolfo, knowing they've escaped, sends Drake in a helicopter to kill them. As they flee through the forest, Frank uses explosives to blow up the helicopter. Bernie starts bleeding internally and realizes he doesn't have much time left, but he's committed to finishing the mission in style. Frank and Bernie catch up to Adolfo. Frank throws a knife at the driver, forcing the car off the road, but Rosario is no longer inside. Adolfo reveals she's been moved to Leandro's location. Frank calls Leandro and proposes a trade, Adolfo for Rosario. They meet, and Leandro sets a trap, placing a gunman nearby. But Bernie kills the gunman with an old pistol that surprisingly still works. Frank and Leandro fight, and as backup arrives, Frank beats Leandro unconscious, saying it's revenge for Manny. The police arrive and arrest everyone involved. Rosario asks about her daughter Julia, and Frank reassures her that she's safe with a neighbor. Peace is restored, thanks to Frank Vega, a real badass. Frank and Rosario are now a couple, but just as they're sharing a romantic moment over wine, Bernie walks in with a date of his own, and they all laugh together.